Hi, I'm Lisa Ray Preston from StepIntoDestiny.com. If you've been to the website and you've taken the STEP test, then you know what your core passion is. Whether you're a service, a potential, a truth, or an empathy. And today we're going to talk about when opposites attract. When you're working with somebody who's polar opposite of your core passion and the adventures that can occur in those kinds of relationships. Now, specifically, we're going to talk about the service and the potential. Now, really, they are polar opposites. So, what the potential views outside of her window is totally different than the landscape the service views looking out of his window. A service thinks very concretely and sequentially. Things go from step 1 to step 2 to step 3 to step 4, very logical sequence, and they like to talk about what they've experienced with their hands, their bodies, their eyes, their noses, their mouths, what they experience life through their senses, and so that's how they describe things, and they talk about the details of what they've experienced. On the other hand, the potential is a very abstract thinker. And instead of step 1, step 2, step 3, step 4, that's really boring to them. They think, oh, what about this and then this and how that connects with that and that and that and that. And they follow that perfectly, that trail. Whereas the service is looking at them going, how on earth did you come up with that? The trick is that the potential was designed by God to think abstractly. The service was designed by God to be very sequential and very concrete. And when we're trying to communicate with each other, we can lose our energy very quickly. For instance, my brother is a service and I'm a potential. And when he's talking about details, I can handle it for about 5 or 10 minutes. And then I am so drained I can hardly stand it. Give me an hour and I'm ready to crawl into a hole because I've listened to details for a solid hour. Now, my brain is created to think, in patterns and lots of ideas and metaphors. And my poor brother, he'd say, Lisa, honey, I love you, but I sure don't understand you. And that wears him out, just trying to listen to my random ideas all over the place. So what happens is this. The service person listens to the potential talk about their latest epiphany or all the ideas they came up with, and just to listen, just to try to be nice and focus and listen, their energy goes just like this. And after 5 minutes, this is what you've got. You have got one empty-brained person. The service is in torment because they have no more energy left. Now, if two potentials were talking and they went off on ideas, it would just fill them up over and over and over again. It'd be just like refilling a tank. But not so when a service and a potential are talking. When a potential is listening to the service's details about where they went, who they saw, what each person said, where they slept. It's just like this. After about 10 minutes, there's nothing left in the brain. One of my potential friends describes it by saying, stick an ice pick in my brain. I can't take it anymore. It's torture to listen to all those details. Now, thankfully, there are some ways to come together. All relationships are work, but especially if you're opposite core passions, it takes a little more time to work things out. One of the suggestions is, because I know the service can only handle 5 minutes of my epiphanies, then I encapsulate them. And I don't go talking for 3 hours to them about my latest repertoire of ideas. The service, knowing that I just can't handle all those details, is going to pick out the most important details, share them, and then only for about 5 or 10 minutes, because that's when I'm clicking off. Sometimes what happens is, especially if you're trying to communicate about resolving an argument or something, the service and the potential need to, after 5 or 10 minutes, go off by themselves and decide, process, okay, this is what I think the other person meant by this. Then to come back, and before you go on into the communication, to say, okay, here's what I thought you said, and the other person say, well, here's what I thought you said. Sometimes, again, because you're looking at totally different landscapes, you're really not saying the same thing. So it takes a little more work at communication, but it can work perfectly. Ideally, when you have a potential, you've got somebody coming up with ideas, but they really don't know how to sequentially map them out very well. That's very draining for them. So you've got a service who's looking at that and going, hey, great idea. Here's how to map it out. And wow, you've come together perfectly in that case. But it's important to realize that what jazzes you up to talk about drains the person if they're your opposite core. In the next video, we'll talk about two other opposites, the truth and the empathy. And here's where things get a little trickier, because it's not just an energy drain when you're talking truth and empathy. It's taking things a little more personally and starting to throw some arrows at each other. Well, we'll talk about how to handle that in a later video. Again, this is Lisa Ray Preston from StepIntoDestiny.com. Thanks for stopping by.